It was supposed to be an ordinary night. Nothing unusual was reported. No warnings were issued. No one believed that anything was about to go wrong. And yet, when the first signs appeared, they were so subtle that no one recognized them for what they were. By the time people realized something was wrong, it was already too late. What makes this story disturbing is not just what happened, but how little sense it makes when examined closely. Every explanation seems incomplete. Every conclusion leaves something unresolved. The facts are real, the people existed, and the events were documented. But when placed together, the pieces refuse to form a clear picture. This is one of those cases where the more you learn, the less you understand. The story begins in a quiet, isolated area, far from major cities and heavy traffic. The kind of place where nothing ever happens, and when something does, everyone remembers it forever. Life there followed predictable routines. People knew each other. Strangers stood out. Changes were noticed. The individuals at the center of this case were not outsiders. They were familiar faces. Ordinary people with ordinary lives. They had jobs, responsibilities, and plans for the future. There was nothing about them that suggested they would soon be part of a mystery that still defies explanation. In the days leading up to the event, nothing alarming was reported. No arguments. No threats. No signs of distress. Phone calls were normal. Conversations were routine. From the outside, everything appeared stable. But later analysis would reveal that stability can be deceptive. On the evening in question, the sequence of events seemed straightforward at first. People went about their routines. Some stayed home. Others went out briefly. Weather conditions were unremarkable. There were no power outages. No emergencies reported in the area. Then, at a precise moment that would later become the focus of intense scrutiny, something changed. The first anomaly was minor. So minor that it was almost dismissed entirely. A delay. A missed check-in. A small deviation from an expected routine. Under normal circumstances, it would not have raised concern. But in hindsight, it was the first crack in the story. Hours passed. Then more time. Attempts to make contact went unanswered. At first, explanations were rational. A drained phone battery. A change of plans. A simple misunderstanding. But as the night turned into morning, concern grew. When people finally went to look for answers, what they found did not align with any reasonable expectation. The scene was not chaotic, but it was deeply unsettling. Objects were out of place in ways that suggested interruption rather than violence. Personal items were present, but their arrangement raised questions. Most troubling of all was what was missing. There were no clear signs of a struggle. No obvious evidence of forced entry. No immediate indication of a crime. And yet, it was clear that something significant had occurred. Something that disrupted normal behavior in a way that could not be easily explained. As the timeline was reconstructed, inconsistencies began to emerge. Witness accounts conflicted with one another. Time estimates did not match. Certain actions seemed irrational given the circumstances. Decisions that should have been simple appeared inexplicably complex. When authorities became involved, the confusion only deepened. Initial assessments leaned toward familiar explanations. Accidents. Miscommunication. Human error. These possibilities were explored first, as they always are. But each one encountered obstacles when matched against the evidence. Some details simply did not fit. Why would someone leave behind essential items if they intended to return? Why would they move in one direction, then abruptly change course? Why were certain actions taken calmly, while others suggested urgency? As investigators expanded their search, more details came to light. Each new discovery added complexity rather than clarity. The case began to feel less like a puzzle with missing pieces and more like a puzzle where the pieces themselves were wrong. The main event, when reconstructed minute by minute, made even less sense. Based on available information, there was a narrow window during which everything changed. A short period of time in which a series of decisions were made that led to irreversible consequences. Yet no single trigger could be identified.
No clear cause.
No obvious threat. People involved acted as though responding to something unseen. Some movements suggested caution. Others suggested fear. And still others suggested nothing at all, as though normal logic had temporarily failed. The pattern was inconsistent, and that inconsistency became one of the most troubling aspects of the case. When the immediate aftermath was examined, the lack of clear answers became impossible to ignore. The expected explanations were absent. The evidence did not point in one direction, but in several, all of them conflicting. Investigators made assumptions early on, as they often do. Some of those assumptions would later be questioned. Certain possibilities were dismissed too quickly. Other avenues were explored too late. Mistakes were made. Timelines were adjusted retroactively. Statements were reinterpreted. What was once considered insignificant became important, and what was once emphasized was quietly set aside. This shifting focus raised concerns among those closely following the case. Why had certain details been overlooked? Why were some questions never fully addressed? Why did official conclusions feel incomplete? As time passed, pressure mounted to provide answers. Families wanted closure. Communities wanted reassurance. Authorities wanted resolution. But resolution requires clarity, and clarity was in short supply. Several explanations were proposed. One theory suggested a chain of ordinary events that escalated unexpectedly. A small problem leading to a larger one, compounded by stress and misjudgment. It was plausible, but it required accepting a series of unlikely decisions occurring back to back. Another theory focused on external involvement. The possibility that someone or something outside the known circle had influenced the outcome. This explanation accounted for certain anomalies but lacked direct evidence strong enough to confirm it. There were also psychological explanations. Acute stress responses. Temporary cognitive impairment.
Moments where fear overrides reason.
These ideas explained behavior, but not circumstances. They answered how, but not why. Environmental factors were considered as well. Conditions that might subtly influence perception and decision-making without leaving obvious traces. These explanations were difficult to prove or disprove, existing in a gray area between science and speculation.
No theory addressed everything.
Each one left gaps. Each one required assumptions. And each one, when examined closely, raised new questions rather than resolving old ones. What remained constant was the feeling that something fundamental was missing from the narrative. Some key element that had either gone unobserved or unacknowledged. Without it, the story could not be completed. As years passed, interest in the case resurfaced periodically. New analyses were conducted. Old evidence was revisited. Fresh perspectives were applied. But the outcome remained the same.
The story still made no sense.
Perhaps the most unsettling aspect is how normal everything seemed before and after the event. Life continued.
Routines resumed.
The world moved on. But the unanswered questions lingered, unresolved and uncomfortable. Some believe the truth is known but withheld. Others believe it was never fully understood to begin with. And some believe the case resists explanation because it exposes the limits of our assumptions about control, logic, and predictability. Not every mystery has a solution. Not every story has a clean ending. This case remains a reminder that reality does not always follow rules we expect it to follow. That sometimes, Events unfold in ways that defy interpretation, and that the absence of an explanation can be more disturbing than any answer. What really happened during those critical moments? Was it a series of unlikely coincidences, or something more deliberate? And if the explanation exists, why has it remained out of reach for so long? The facts are real. The story is documented. But the meaning remains elusive. And perhaps that is what makes this case so unsettling.